So I've been playing Dune Awakening now for around 20 plus hours, and I really want to talk about what I thought this game was, what maybe you thought this game was, how I'm finding it. I'm interested in how you're finding it. And I also want to talk about something I like to really talk about is, the solo experience in MMOs. So something I really want to talk about here is what this would be like for a solo player. Now, I haven't been playing solo. I've been playing with someone else. Yeah, we'll get to that. So if you're a solo player, this video is going to be for you. And if you're interested in Dune, this video is for you. And if you're playing Dune, this video is also for you. Congratulations. Anyway, so I'm about, as I said, 20 plus hours in. And let's just start with the premise and the character creator. The cutscene, they already mentioned this in the marketing, but the cutscene really hammers home that this is an alternate timeline Dune where, Paul Atreides and all of that never happened. That leaves room open for your character to have more agency and be, actually a fun game that isn't just dominated by Paul Atreides. So moving on to the character creator, there's all the classes you'd expect: Trooper, Bene Gesserit, all of the good Dune stuff. And one thing I will say that Funcom did really well here is how much detail you can go into with character customization. Everything can be tweaked. I won't go too in depth because you've probably played an in-depth character creator but what is really good here is the fact that it's an improvement over Conan and their previous games, but also over most other MMOs that just give you like a few heads, a few little hairstyles and, faces. And at this, you can really, really adjust sliders for every part of your body. So I created a Bene Gesserit character because I think they're probably low-key like the best, most interesting class. And hopped in with a friend. And, Dune Awakening's been, swirling in the old gaming news for a while. And I didn't know, this could have very easily gone the other way. I didn't know what to expect. I've played all of Funcom's MMOs and games before. So their previous MMO was Conan, and then before that, their previous MMO was The Secret World, which are both good games, and I think a lot of people slept on The Secret World. I can see, and we'll get to it, but you can see the kind of lineage coming out in Dune Awakening, where this kind of feels like their magnum opus to date, where everything's coalesced, and they haven't just created a copy of Conan in the desert, they've really made this a unique game. And I was also worried that this might be a bit of a cash grabby rip-off type, we've got the Dune license, let's just make it all the same thing. But it follows roughly the story, but it's not just like a rehashing of the Dune movie or book. So you get into the desert, and we'll just keep things kind of surface level, so no spoilers or anything, but yeah, you get into the desert and you're tutorialized for a couple hours and how to build a base and how to craft and how to gather things and all of the stuff you expect from an MMO combat. And then you begin the quest line properly. And let's talk combat to begin with, right? So combat's very good. It's something I was impressed with because obviously in Dune they have the shields and you have to move slowly through the shield to be able to actually hurt someone, and that mechanic is in the game. This shooting, the crafting is actually interesting because you don't just obviously pull out a pickaxe or anything and just hit stone. You actually use like a laser, but you have to shoot a pattern on the rock or whatever you're mining with that laser, which is really interesting. That's a really good way of doing it. It doesn't take a long time, but it requires you to actually be engaged in what you're doing. You can't just right-click a piece of stone and walk off and use the toilet. Now, the base building is really interesting because you build your base, you build your little console in the base to kind of finalize it. You can set permissions, like which of your friends and that can use it. And you can put stuff inside it, and you can have one at a time, and you can move them or abandon them. And it's really interesting that you can actually just build your base wherever. Obviously, rocky outcrop recommended so that the big worm does not eat it. Now, for the minimap and exploration-wise, you have to climb a big rock somewhere and fire off a survey beacon to kind of remove the fog of war, and there's... the way you kind of play the game is that there's things scattered across the map that you can kind of see and say, oh, this will give me this kind of crafting material, and this or this, and this is a mission, and this is a base that I can take out. And in that sense, it's really cool, and there's a lot of exploration, and there isn't... Players don't have names above their heads. NPCs don't have names above their heads. It feels like a single-player game in a multiplayer world. And on that note, something I was worried about was like, hey, how interesting is this going to be if, like, there's 5,000 people at the same time just running across the desert with names above their heads? And, like, is it going to take away from the kind of cinematic nature of the Dune universe? And gladly, they don't... I've encountered a handful of other players, but the game seems to know when to load them in and not. So, like, it really does a good job of keeping players away from each other in servers so that it doesn't just get completely overloaded and be like, well, I thought this was an empty desert, but there's like 500 guys dancing over there. Something that's nice is that the game also has a really good conversation system, and based on the traits of your character class or the skills you pick, you can talk to people and get different dialogue options, like from merchants, and find out more lore. And talking of merchants, we'll just like use them as an example. They have real personalities, and everyone in this game seems to really be like a single player fleshed out character. It's not just your bog standard, they're voice acted. It's a real far cry from the early days of like WoW or whatever, insert other really janky MMO no one cares about here. Speaking of the main quest, there are also times when, you go into a solo instance, very much like The Secret World, if anyone played that, where you get to kind of find out more about the story and your role in it. And those are also very well done. And so in that respect, this game is really, really polished. It's probably Funcom's most polished launch, even though there was, problems at the start with the servers. But we've talked a lot about the goods and how I found it. So let's talk about the negatives for a second. And going with that is solo play. So this is very much a section for people who kind of want those criticisms and want to find out about solo play too. I feel like, even as far in as I am, the game is still very basic. And what I mean by that is you play a good couple hours of tutorial where, as I said, it shows you how to build a base, it shows you how to do all this stuff. But then it makes you kind of move. It says like, okay, move to this new area and basically do it for real. It makes you reset up a base and reset up this and find that. But the area it moves you to is extremely hot. So the first area is like a little tutorial zone that allows you a little bit of leeway. And then when it moves you, things start to get real. Now, that's good in a way, okay? Like, it's a lot hotter and you really have to take things seriously or you'll just, dehydrate out in the desert. Because it asks you to do the same things again, and it's very kind of repetitive at the moment that I'm in. And I know it's going to open up because I can see where the quest is heading, but it's I would say, like, they really didn't need to make you make a whole base again, because it makes you abandon your base and create a new one. And it's just like, oh no, not again. And, going along with that is the solo play aspect. So while I've been playing with one other person, I've also been playing with, what is this like for solo play in mind? Because I like to play MMOs solo sometimes. And the thing is, it's a lonely experience. And yes, the world of Dune is supposed to be kind of like Arrakis is supposed to be lonely, and you're out in the desert and you're kind of scavenging and stuff. But what I mean by that is, if you're playing solo, it's going to take even longer. There was 2 of us building base resources and it took a while. It's going to take longer. You're going to have to be a lot more self-sufficient. And it's going to be tough because even with 2 of us sharing water bottles and the water that we found and ammo and everything like that, whatever we need, crafting materials we shared, and collecting copper ore and then refining it in the base to create whatever we need to progress. It's very, very tough. And that was with 2 people. And so with one, it's gonna take longer. you're also gonna, if you start running out of water, it's just on you. Like that's it. There's no one else being like, oh, I've got a bottle of water in my bag, or the Dune equivalent, So it's going to be tough. It's not bad. Because it has an interesting story, and because the NPCs are all fully fleshed out and voice acted, it gives single player vibes anyway. But I think it's just something to be aware of. Like, it is going to be tough. Some of these boss fights, some of these areas you have to go to for the main quest are very tough. I mean, we went to an area where we had to take out a boss, and he was in like this underground complex, and to even get to him was a real struggle. We had to fight through hordes of these guys, and if you're doing that solo, it's gonna be a lot tougher. It's not impossible, but I think that's just the reality of the experience. So, if you're in it for the story and everything, then that's good. But I think you will because by the very nature that you start in the desert, you start this game in the desert, you build a base in the desert, away from people, and when you go and you build around rocky outcrops, because if you go away from them, the worm comes up to get you. So it's that's kind of, I think, the reality for a lot of this game. Obviously it does change as you get to bigger settlements and everything further into the game, but I think if you're the sort of person who wants to play solo, and you want to put some music or a podcast on, and you just kind of want to zone out and do things, then very much you can do that, and then pause your thing to listen to the cutscenes and everything. But I think it is going to be tough. You need to be prepared more for a survival experience if you're solo play than for a action-packed crazy experience, because you're going to have to build your own bike by yourself. You're going your little speeder transport thing. You're going to have to navigate by yourself. You're going to have to really plan. There's no one who's going to come and bail you out. And this, I would say, a large amount of Dune Awakening is survival, especially the early part. It's not so much later when you build stuff, I'm going to segue here into, because this affects both solo and multiplayer, but the quests, the side, like not the main quest line, but the game really asks you, even 20 hours in, it just wants you to constantly be crafting and researching schematics and crafting new things for your base. And it's like, I really wish that it just got that over in the beginning, but it'll, like, for all this time, it'll be like, you need to build this, you need to build a speeder bike, and then you build it, and then it's like, now you need to research iron refining, iron this, copper this, and you kind of think, is this still a tutorial, or am I in the game? Because it's like, research the schematic, but to research the schematic, you press Y and then click on the schematic, and then it just like researches. So it's like, what? I mean, okay, you need some intel for that, but you always have plenty. It's kind of like a pointless task, and then you have to constantly be collecting materials to do these things. And obviously it's an MMO, but I think just the pacing in that aspect is a little bit off, and it's something I don't like. But, as I said, in other ways, this is one of the most unique MMOs out there. It does a really good job with its world. Dune is a really cool setting to use, and I think it's a very enjoyable game. To me, it's more enjoyable if you play with people. But if you are a solo player, you can do it. Just be aware that you're definitely in for like a more Subnautica type survival-y game. And those are my thoughts on Dune Awakening. Let me know in the comments below if you're playing, what you think about the game, if you're playing solo or with people, whether you agree or disagree, whether you're holding off buying it yet. I'm interested to kind of find out more from the community about, how other people are really receiving this game. Because, as I said, my kind of TLDR is really great MMO that's unique, but with a huge focus on survival and some kind of weird pacing mechanics and issues where you just think these kind of easy tutorial-y crafting quests should have been over like 10 hours ago.